A walk among the stars, the monsters, the paranormal, and supernatural. Join your tour guides, Justin and Josh, on this cryptic journey through life and beyond. What you may not know is you've been on this journey for a long time, and you finally arrived. Join us and our cult by subscribing to this podcast and giving us a generous 5-star rating. With doing so, your soul will be set and the afterlife defined. Welcome to It's Cryptic Out There.
Welcome everybody to another episode of It's Cryptic Out There podcast. I'm your host Justin, alongside my co-host Josh.
What's up, everybody? Justin and I just did a 2-hour interview. Which you guys are about to listen to. We just decided to do that first before we did an intro. Really crazy, so we're just gonna, I guess, talk about it all.
Yeah, we speak to Ron and Joe from Wild and Weird, West Virginia, and they tell us some insane stuff that we never would have thought of when it comes to paranormal, supernatural.
Like, you might be thinking when you listen to this podcast, like, oh, you know, I know that Bigfoot exists, pop culture, all that, but like, you're really gonna know about Bigfoot. Really? Yeah, you're gonna know about Bigfoot after this.
Yes.
But not just that, like, we talk a little paranormal, we talk cryptic, we talk, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
How there might be 2 Bigfoot,
interdimensional,
different
stuff. Yeah.
Radiations involved. Aliens. Guys, this is a wild and weird conversation.
Yes. So we'll just let you listen to it now.
Yeah, and we'll love to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Alright, we are here with the 2 from West Virginia, Wild and Weird. If you both would introduce yourselves and explain what really is Wild and Weird West Virginia.
Well, I'm Joe, and the other guy over here, that's Ron. And we met over 20 years ago at this point.
Wow.
Oh, jeez, has it been that long?
It has been that long. It's horrible. It started off really, like, the whole story is weird, and it's full of just happenstance that seems to be guided, I guess.
Good term. Yeah, that's a good term.
Because Ron was managing a pet store for the longest time. And when I was younger, I started going in there and buying fish. And then he got me into doing saltwater. And then a few years later, I wound up just kind of going in there, helping out and working around there every now and then after I'd get off work from my other job just for fun. Mm-hmm. And we would share stories back and forth about stuff. And then we started a completely different group that had nothing to do with this, that was a reptile breeding business.
Oh, wow.
And then that ran its course. We're still doing it today.
Yeah.
and it's kind of now blended in with Wild and Weird. And
they're cryptids, so there's that.
Yeah, it fits.
Yeah.
It fits. So.
Yeah, we work with crested geckos a lot, and some other geckos from New Caledonia. And crested geckos were once thought to be extinct until they fell through a window during a storm, and then they were discovered to be actually a sizable population on the island of New Caledonia, and not extinct at all. Just really good at hiding.
Wow,
interesting.
That's awesome. I did not expect
they
to
had
hear
no
that.
idea what these things looked like, really, because they have tails, and the ones that they'd seen in the wild had no tails whatsoever. So they found some eggs, hatched these eggs, and lo and behold, they had tails. For the longest time, they thought they were just like these little frog butt things. But,
and they even thought that they live produced, because they've never found eggs from these guys either.
Wow.
And the first ones in captivity started dropping eggs. They're like, well.
That's amazing.
That is.
That's so crazy. That's funny.
So-
That's funny you say that, falling out of a window kind of throws in with everything that we talk about, where it's something off the wall.
Right.
An interest that you have just comes with a little bit of a cryptic background to it.
Yeah. So then Ron and I both have had a very long-standing fascination with the strange and unusual. Ron has been doing this stuff for nearly 35 years now.
Wow.
And I'll let him tell you about his side. And then mine was mostly a fascination with Bigfoot. And I was aware of the whole UFO phenomena, obviously. Like, you can't not be. And I'm former military, and we were told not to report things if we did see stuff.
Wow.
But aside from that, my fascination with Bigfoot, and then we started telling stories back and forth, and then the weirdness grew, and we were both artists, and figured, why not? Let's not waste this. Let's do something with it and use it as an outreach.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. I believe we actually had went to a festival. I think we went to Mothman.
It was Mothman. We all went together.
We had seen some of the art that were there, and we wanted to do this for years, and we were just like, we can do this. We have the means to do it now. We have the show that we can take on the road. I mean, back then we were touring, 45 shows or something?
Our biggest show schedule was 50 shows.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Wow.
It was ridiculous.
And that was on the reptile side. So, we were on the road nonstop.
Yeah.
Dang.
So we decided to take some art with us and set it on the table one day. And people came up and they loved the art, and they started telling us their stories. And I was like, man, do I really want to go down this road again? Because honestly, I walked away from this stuff years ago. I have a very long history with I call it related phenomena, because I kind of think it might be. I don't know yet. This is like Joe said, it's a 30-some-year mystery at this point, and I don't know if we'll ever figure out what's going on. But my whole thing started with a UFO sighting when I was, back in the 70s, 75, 76. And I got obsessed with basically psychic phenomena, anything to do with, just trying to figure out the mysteries of the unexplained, I guess. Started a ghost hunting group. I was Ghost Watch a little bit later on, and then that's pretty much it. I walked away from a lot of it, and somehow I ended up back here.
Right.
All roads return.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah.
It's really strange how it all works.
It's so tempting when someone tells you, their story. You get excited. Like, we get excited all the time.
Yeah.
Like in our Facebook group, people commenting their, sightings of whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
And that's really how I grew up. My grandmother had paranormal or some UFO sightings. My mom, there was always something. Even my dad would tell me he worked in maintenance at a hospital for like 30 years, and he would tell me certain things. Yeah. So
He saw stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's a very quiet guy, and I know you're probably listening, Dad, and you need to let out some of those stories.
Right.
You don't know what he's got tucked away in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always just encaptured my life, and I know Justin as well. So to hear you guys talk about it, it's just great.
Yeah,
you know?
I grew up watching like the craziest of horror movies. Like I watched House of 1,000 Corpses when I was like 5, and it just grew on me, as you can see. And then started getting into the paranormal stuff. Like I watched Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures. Then we started doing paranormal investigations on a YouTube channel. Went to St. Albans in Radford, Virginia.
Yeah.
You know where that is. Experienced that. We did some film projects. We filmed at St. Albans.
Yeah. Spent like 12 hours in there.
Yeah. It was pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
But then I started the podcast going on 2 years ago, and now Josh, he came on last year, beginning of last year, and we've been rocking it ever since.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
And
Yes, see, we were thrust back into the investigation stuff. Well, Ron was thrust in. I had done some stuff in the past, like as far as just going out and looking for things, or going out, because I used to be a minister as well, and so I would be called to go do various things. And it wasn't something that we were exactly planning on doing, because we were just wanting to bring, our biggest thing was we wanted to represent these mysteries. We wanted to represent the folklore and the legends based off of the witness sightings, not off necessarily pop culture as much. We wanted to give true representation, and when we started doing that, people started telling their stories.
Yeah.
And it drew us back in.
Well, then it became about outreach.
It did.
These people, it was great because they would come to the table and they'd tell us these stories, and they would whisper those stories to where other people couldn't hear them at first. And you're not going to believe this. I'm like, yeah, I'll totally believe it. Just, go ahead, say it. And they would tell us stuff that they'd not told anyone for years. And, it's like, what do we call it, Joe? The weird magnets, right?
Yep, weird magnet.
It's like people, they attract to each other. They want to tell these stories, but they're scared to tell these stories, and we give them an open platform to do it. And we've been building more and more platforms to let them do it. And we always said we were trying to normalize the paranormal. That was our goal, and we're still fighting at that. But we're getting there, I think.
Yeah. That's a lot similar to us. Like people reaching out. Especially with like we do some true crime stories too. We would get messages from random people that are like, I was too scared at the time to tell the police, but I'm willing to tell you. I'm like, okay.
And even the paranormal, I think just the fact, like when our podcast wasn't as popular as it is now, I would still have people come up to me and be like, hey, I feel like I can tell you this, Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, there's nothing you can say to me, and it's kind of the view that we've taken on this, is that I'm here to be open, I want what you say to be true, and let's see the facts, let's see what can lay out there and see what's possible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So what is the goal that you guys essentially have with this business?
Oh, with the business?
Yeah.
The business is kind of, the goal of the business now has changed.
It has.
The business now fuels the investigations, and it fuels the outreach, because we host large public gatherings, and a couple of them a year are free to the public.
That's awesome.
And they turn out great.
Yeah.
And we just make a spot where people can come and share their stories, have a good time, family-friendly environment, and it's great.
Yeah.
And it keeps it to where, I mean, you guys know, you're saying you were paranormal investigators in the past and still do it. It's not cheap.
No. Traveling-wise.
And we've found a way to where we can do this and take the burden off of us and our families.
Well, we take it off of our and I use the term loosely, but fans, because we don't, one of our things is we don't have Patreons. We don't, we just don't do that. And what we do is we have Etsy, and we have our sales at the tables, and those things help fund and pay for all those expeditions and all the equipment.
That's awesome.
And the radio show.
And the radio show.
That's why our podcast is free, and we don't run ads. We don't run because we don't have to. We are generating enough passive revenue that we're able to take that off of our fans and off of our listener base, and it also is not, we're not being touched by it either.
Right.
That's awesome.
So it's a win-win.
Yeah, that's really cool.
What's the podcast called again, and when did that start?
Welcome to Wild and Weird Radio, Wild and Weird West Virginia podcast.
Nice.
Formally established in March of 2020. That was our inaugural episode. Yeah. And we became a weekly podcast after that.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, I started podcasting in 2020, I guess, because the pandemic, we got bored.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same with us.
I remember when people were looking in 2020, when we were actually trying to find some cameras. It was almost impossible because everybody was doing the same thing. They, microphones and cameras. They were just like, nope.
Perfect time to try a hobby.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, luckily for us, though,
audience.
we already had, the only thing we didn't have was the cameras, and the first year and a half of the podcast was just audio only, because we had the gear for almost a year before we actually started the podcast, because we are over planners in what we do. We want to make sure that we've got everything we need before we put our feet down.
Yeah.
And so when we finally launched it, we were ready to go guns blazing, but then we could not find cameras to save our lives that were like good cameras. Like, you could find decent webcams, but you couldn't find like the really nice 1080p ones. Those were, you just couldn't touch them.
Yeah. Yeah, we use a Sony Handycam that's just right in front of us. We have one, but we're wanting to get multiple, but it costs.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah. Let's see. So, do you have like any particular cases that really changed your life, or sightings that changed your life to like start this?
I think we both do.
I think so, yeah.
Ron, you want to go ahead and run first?
I don't know which one it would be, Joe.
Yours happened earlier than mine, I think.
Yeah, right. I mean, pretty much mine set me on the path, and that was the original sighting, which just, couldn't get out of my head. And then later on, like I told you, it moved on into more research and just almost, it was almost an obsession for a while, trying to figure out, the whole psychic side of it all. And I got very good at the psychic side. I got a lot of knowledge. Let's just put it that way. I learned a lot and about out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, all that. And I had no idea I was doing this stuff around the same time the government was doing it. That was something that would come out years later. And there was always this element of a sort of contact of something. And still don't know what that was, but something. And there's definitely information that's there that you can tap into. That was hard to digest, though, for a while, because I could see where it was pointing to, these questions, that were all coming up, the ancient astronaut theories and whatnot. And, I was raised in the church, and it kind of it was a big conflict with me at first, and with the belief system. But I'm a duality of this person. I've always been this duality. I can split myself into this rational and spiritual side, and I think that's the balance, and I think that's where a lot of people miss it. But over time, I came to realize that we are looking at masks, and these are all words, these are all labels. This is all kind of the same stuff. And when I accepted that, I'm like, well, this makes too much sense. And now it's more terrifying than it was before. But let's go into it and investigate a little further. And so, after my hiatus, we got, I don't know, something just pulled us together. I'll be honest with you. It really, something just pulled us together. We were at a small event. I remember at, where were we at, Joe? We were at the Flatwoods event, weren't we? Well, we met, no, actually, no, it wasn't that. We went to.
You're talking about Creature Weekend when we met Wayne and met everybody who's now like
these Creature
pivotal
Weekend.
people in our life.
Yeah, and they accepted us like immediately, which was just crazy.
Because up to that point, that was foreign to us. Yeah. In the reptile community, we had to like fight tooth and nail to
the pet industry is cutthroat. There's no nicer way to say it. They're cutthroat. They're cutthroat. You have your fans, you have your friends, and then everyone else is coming up. Yeah, pretty much. But
it was foreign concept. When we went to Creature Weekend, they embraced us, and even in other portions of the this paranormal and cryptic community, we had tried to like dip our toes in a few other places, and we were cold-shouldered. But when we went here, it was totally different.
Okay,
that's awesome. But yeah, we went there, and all these strange things kept happening. That this trail started to form, and met Stanton Friedman. Stanton Friedman, I got to ask him, well, who should we listen to now that you're retiring? Because that was his last shows. And we didn't know it was really going to be his real last shows, though. But he said, Stan Gordon, and he gave me some other name. And I was like, I know Stan Gordon. I know of Stan Gordon. I remember that name, And a couple weeks later, we found out he's coming to Flatwoods.
Yeah.
So we go to Flatwoods. And at Flatwoods, we meet all these other people. My very first interview ever on camera, interviewing anyone, was Stan Gordon. And we had this massive talk. We're good friends now. All of us are good friends now.
And mind you, he tried to get out of this interview. He was trying to have me interview him, and he was going to record it. And I was like, nope, this is a guy that you wanted to meet. You wanted to talk. You're going to sit down with him. You're going to do it.
Yeah, so we're, long story short, we're pretty much best friends now. We trade information from West Virginia to Pennsylvania, and we've been working together. And we do see some form of link to some of this phenomena. Wow. And it's interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah, that is so cool.
And for me, it started in 2001. Really, really started in 2001. Like I'd always had an interest in the strange and paranormal and whatnot. I grew up. My grandmother was very Native American, and we went about life in the woods. I was taught wood lore from the time I was really little, and going out and foraging and things like that, and told what could be out there. Not in a sense that it was like literal, but like just the storytelling aspect.
Yeah. And
then it became literal to me in 2001. I had what can only be described as a Bigfoot sighting, and I saw 3 creatures, and I observed them for a brief period of time. And then after that, I was infatuated with the topic for years. Like I was on back. I don't know how old you guys are. I'm old. Ron's old. We both remember Angel Fire, which was like one of the old internet servers back in the day.
Okay.
And I got on there, and it was the original Bigfoot forum. And I was going through there and just combing through looking for anything I could. Because that's the only thing. You'd go on there and you'd ask Jeeves, what can I learn about Bigfoot? That's where it would take you.
Oh, gee, I just remembered that for a second.
Right?
Took it back in time.
So anyway, I wound up there, dug through the databases, read a bunch of sighting reports, and it honestly, it helped me out a lot because I couldn't go back to that same spot. And this was an area that I had hunted in years and years and years and years. And I couldn't go back to it for a little over a year. And I waited to go back until after all the leaves and everything were off the trees and I could see everything very clearly. And it did. It was the only thing it can sum up to is a Bigfoot sighting. And then from there, like I said, the supernatural and spiritual stuff was it just accepted from a very young age because I was part of the church from the time I was a teenager and then became a minister. And then I didn't talk about my Bigfoot sighting or any of that stuff, or the UFO sighting that I'd had in high school, because in those circles, you just didn't talk about it. Same thing with the military. You did not talk about it. No. I had a top secret security clearance. I worked with stealth technology, and because I was a fabricator, and so I could not risk my job by saying anything weird. Anyway, backtracking to putting us on this course, we started taking reports from people with the art, and we started going down this path, and now we're where we had never thought we would be. Because at that same event where Ron had mentioned we'd met Stan, we also met our original co-host of Wild and Weird Radio and one of our best friends, and he's passed away now. Oh. But we'd also met through him. We were able to meet Bob Gimlin, who was the Gimlin from the Patterson-Gimlin film site, which is like the Bigfoot film. Yeah. We got in with him, and because he was giving us the nod and saying those guys from West Virginia are okay, that seal of approval from a legend suddenly put us in a totally different position, because not only were we getting the green light with people like Bob, we were getting the green light from people like Stan Gordon and Stanton Friedman, who Ron had sit and spoke with for what seemed like forever that day. And Stan wasn't even about to break away from it. There was other people walking up to the table and just standing there waiting. He was talking to Ron.
Awesome.
That's so cool.
And then we're hanging out, and
let's not forget Seth.
I was going to say we're hanging out with these people who were just starting out around the same times we were, like the guys from Small Town Monsters, Seth Breedlove. He had produced, I think, 3 films at that point, and we got to be really good friends with him before we even really knew how into this stuff he really was. And now we've been involved in multiple projects with him. He's helped us out with different events we've done. He's the whole Small Town Monsters group is like family to us now. There's so many of these people that now are like friends and family to us that at one point we were just seeing them on TV and we're like, oh man, that guy's really cool. He's really smart.
Just like Dave. I mean, exactly like Dave Spinks. But bumped into him, and you can get him to shut up now. I mean,
Yeah, and like for Cliff Barrickman and James Bobo Fay. Those guys are both on my weekly call list. Yeah. At least Bobo is. I talk to Cliff when Cliff remembers to he needs something, because we sell some stuff out at his museum, and but anytime we find data, because of these connections, now anytime when we find data and we record anything, we send it to them for peer review before we ever release it to the public.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because we have that group of peers, and they're not just some ho-hum group of peers. These are the most respected people in the community,
right?
And we send our stuff to them, and they are the ones that give us the or the thumbs up.
It's pretty surreal that people you looked up to, now you're essentially working with them.
Yeah,
it's weird,
so
man. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird.
And not even that, but just you can go toot our own horn here for a second. We actually just won the Bigfoot Research Group of the Year.
Awesome!
Wow, that's awesome.
For 2022.
That's so cool.
And that was from the Bigfoot forums, which is the same Bigfoot forums that I went to way back in the old school days.
Nice. See how it all loops around.
Yeah,
it all comes.
It's strange, man.
Yeah,
it's all strange.
That's awesome.
But yeah, we are people that other people are now reaching out to for the same kind of things that we were reaching out to other people for now.
That's sick. That's awesome. So could you? I read the article on the recent Bigfoot thermal capturing. Would you be able to elaborate on what all happened with that?
Well, Ron's gonna have to be the one to talk exclusively about this until we get to the aftermath.
Okay.
Because the way this whole thing worked out was Ron was going out to document the outing, because this is wild and weird.
Literally all it was done.
He was there to document it for just for marketing purposes and to put it up on our YouTube and stuff to show, hey, look, come to Wild and Weird Con. This is the kind of stuff you get to do. Blah blah blah. That whole thing. I was back because I'm a classically trained chef, and when you do these workshops and stuff with us, I always cook food. So I was back at the camp preparing like about 3 gallons of chili and hot dogs, and then hot dog chili and slaw. I was cooking, and they're out finding Bigfoot.
So we didn't intend to find Bigfoot, but we hit the trail
so
after a little briefing that Hellbent Holler did. They brought some equipment down, and we're going to take some people out into the woods. They had about 3 or 4 little stations set up. You had an infrared station, you had a listening station, then you had the thermal station. So at these stations, do a little presentation, and everybody would get to go and look through, the equipment or listen through the equipment and whatnot. And there was about a little over a dozen of us out there, probably about 15 or so, I'd say, about a dozen participants and
there were 50
extras.
Participants plus you.
And
so there's about 18 people.
So we were out there, plus the crew. And I was just out there shooting some video. I wanted some video. It'd been really cool to get this, and I'm thinking, we can use this for some marketing, like Joe said. And I'm out there, and this guy, he's over listening on. It just happened to have everything running. We were recording, and we hear him say, "There's some popping sounds coming from down in the valley." I'm like, "Ooh, popping sounds! That'll be cool." So we had just got our thermal, literally just got our thermal, and fired it up. I'm like, well, I'm gonna maybe catch something down in the valley. Maybe there's a possum or a deer or even a bear. It'd be awesome. And went down in there, and what we see on the tether, because it's tethered to the phone, everybody's around us can gather around and see it, is something. I mean, it was, at first we weren't too sure. At first we thought, well, wait a minute, someone's down there, and Jessie's standing there, she's like, no one's down there. We scouted this area out. No one's getting down there. And we didn't really understand at the time what she meant by that. But it was down in a ravine. And later we would see the ravine and see how hard it was to get down in that ravine. No one was doing that at night. So we're watching it. And then, as we're watching it, she suggests, should we go up to the thermal to take a look? Because about 200 yards or 300 yards, something up around the bend, looking down in that valley, they had 3 big thermal systems set up where everybody could look down in the valley.
Yeah, they had the same thermal that Ron was carrying, plus a pulsar, Hellion, and a I think it was a FLIR Scout.
It might have been, I can't remember exactly. But I'm like, well, I want to stay here and see what this thing is. And, this thing moves. And when it moves, we can see it's bigger than what we thought it was. And at that point, we're like, yeah, we're going up to the thermal. I wanted, like I said, I'd like to stay, but I was not staying back there by myself. It's just not going to happen. So as everybody goes up to the thermal station, I'm like, all right. So go up to the thermal station thinking, we're going to be able to look down in that valley. If there's something down there, we're going to see it. And they're looking down in the valley, they're scanning down the valley, there's nothing in that valley at all. And I believe Joe from Hellbent Holler, Joe Doyle, he was out scouting as well at the time because, he said he had heard something on the hill. So we don't know what that was. I didn't hear that, nothing of that. That's in the report. It's all that's written up and available. But go back to the, we stepped back out. One of the interesting things was as we went back out there, as we did go onto the trail, all the lights went out, and
power for the entire complex went
out. The whole complex power goes down.
It's in a state park. It's Chief Logan Park, and the lodge. They were about a quarter mile from the lodge.
Yeah.
And the lighting from the lodge is enough because it's a big parking lot.
It's bright.
Big bright LEDs, so it sends off a bunch of light pollution.
Wow.
And then we were just in complete void out there with just starlight. And it was amazing. I mean, and that's when Joe came on the radio. It was like, yeah, the power just went out. I'm like, oh, good. So we continued on. When we came back out, though, as soon as they hit the parking lot, as soon as the first of our group hit the parking lot, all the lights came back on. Literally, just like that. And that's kind of where my story, part of it ends. I went inside, did the debrief with everyone. We started looking at the video that I captured. Martin Groves was there. He looked at it and he was just fascinated. And he had said that he had heard something, heard some stuff down in the woods before we went in. And like, wow, okay. But so that was the evening. You know, we were kind of fascinated by what had happened with that. And poor Joe, he's cooking.
Yep, I'm out there freezing my tail end off by the fire because it was 36 degrees that night.
But I got to tell you, amazing food. Okay, it was awesome. It was so worth going back. You know, we've been out there for hours.
Yeah, you've been out there almost 3 hours. The chili had done, and I was trying to make sure it didn't scorch because I'm like, where are they?
At least you're warming up with the chili.
Yeah, well, no, I'd ran out of wood. I had to go buy more wood.
Oh,
so
man.
like it was I'd worked for state parks for a while too, like just through the summer, and then I would do the campfire cooking and all that stuff for them. So I knew how much wood I needed for how much time. Mm-hmm. And so I'd already bought the wood and had it put out there, and then I had to go track them down and get more bundles of wood just to try to warm everything back up.
Yeah, we were in, like I said, there was a briefing at the beginning. That was close to an hour, and then there was the actual, demo, another hour or so, and then a debriefing. So yeah, we were out there a while.
Yeah.
So going back to the light situation, do you believe like that was some type of connection with whatever you guys were seeing?
I have no idea. I mean, there are people who believe this. Based on the weirdness that we experienced,
it's possible. We were told because I talked to the superintendent. I got him on the phone and said, just asking, hey, what's the ETA? Yeah. And he was saying it was going to be like 4 or 5 in the morning is what AEP had told him, because they had found a tree that had got tangled up in the branches or in the wires and had completed the circuit and blew a fuse. So having it turned on within a couple hours was weird, bizarre, because it was a transformer replacement is what they had to do.
Wow.
And that's normally a 4 or 5 hour job. So that's if they have all the parts on them when they get there.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Wow.
But yeah, it was weird. It was really weird. Then the following day, we had shown everybody the footage. Ron was going around. I was basically dragging Ron around by his jacket. Show him.
Yeah.
They need to see it.
Yeah, and what was great about that is, the whole peer review thing. Well, we never release anything unless it's peer reviewed. I actually had a clip up that night that we saw this thing, announcing that we had seen something because enough researchers had seen it at that point.
Because they were there.
Yeah, they were there.
Actually at the event. Yeah. So.
And they're like, yeah, that's something significant, and we only had a couple people saying, oh, that's just somebody down the woods. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe, I don't know. So we're like, well, we're going out there tomorrow after the event. We'll find out. So Eric Altman and Tom Mick, they went out the next day during the actual the show, because this was a Saturday.
Yeah.
And we're dying to get out there, and it's just beautiful weather for this too. But we just have other things to do. We have to take care of the show, make sure everybody's happy, and all the vendors are good. Meanwhile, Eric and Tom are out there on the trail, and they come back, and they're on camera, and they say what they say, and it's pretty much, no one's going down in there. It's just not at night. It's not happening at night. You would see them at night. They'd have to have some way to be able to get down there.
And it was difficult enough as it was during the day.
So we had to, as soon as the last vendor left that evening, out of the hallway, we're like, we're going, and as as we're going, we had a couple people who said they wanted to tag along with us. So
we actually stayed a second night at the lodge just so we could go over there.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, we did, and it was pretty worth it, I think.
Of course.
Yeah, worth it.
So we get over there to the location, and I'm trying to get Ron to position me roundabout, on the trail. Get me to a point where I would be straight line down the mountain at it. And he got me there, and I'm looking around, and we do find sign of something large that has moved down the mountain.
Yeah, you and Jamie had noticed that back up there, right? Or Jen, you and Jen, I think.
Yeah, it was me and Jen at first, and then Jamie came in. Jamie was pointing out some other stuff. And I'm a certified master naturalist with the West Virginia DNR, and I teach tracking courses. I teach all kinds of other different stuff for the DNR. And we were examining these to say, well, okay, what could this be? Because when we go out and we do an investigation, we don't have Bigfoot on the brain. As much Bigfoot stuff as I have on the wall behind me, I'm looking for a bear, I'm looking for a large coyote, I'm looking for something that would have matted this down, even a deer. Mm-hmm. Could have used it for a bed down, but there would have been hairs there, there would have been deer hooves there, there'd have been something. And all we're finding are these large depressions. They're in the grass, not very definite, but then we find one in the mud. And we ultimately wound up going back to cast that because I didn't have my gear with me. I didn't have my backpack with all my plaster. We're down there doing the show. I had pulled all that stuff out of the truck to make room for the rig that we needed to take for the show. So we had to wind up going back out there again. And at this point, I go down into the valley.
Well, you're getting ahead of yourself. Can you continue the story?
Oh, no. We'll get that. We'll get that. We'll go there. So we're back there in the day, and I'm going down into the valley, and I take a 60-foot spill where I fall, land on my butt, and just slide straight down the mountain.
I'll answer your question now. I did not get it on camera. I was recording, I was filming, but I did not get that on camera.
Unfortunate.
Might have had some weird audio of me laughing because I like.
Oh yeah, he laughed all the way down.
Yeah,
I'd be cussing.
So we make it down there to the bottom, and
you make it down to the bottom.
I make it to the bottom. Ron's up top,
trying to sight you in.
Yeah,
and
he's getting me in position.
Yeah,
and once we get locked in there into position, we're situated. I'm like, I see where this thing was. Not only do I see where it was, but I see where it moved because I found other footprints. They were uncastable. We couldn't have done anything with those because they're just, they're just slop on the ground. But the shapes of some of them, there were definitely a large bare footprint. And get down into the spot where this thing was, and it was right in this little water hole that is a part of a mountain stream. And the mountain stream's only active whenever it's been raining. So when we're there, it's not been raining for a while, it's pretty dry. But there's a water source there. And in the thermal, you can see what looks like an appearance of this thing taking a scoop from the ground to its mouth and lowering its head as well. And we were guessing that it was either eating or drinking. There was also some nettle leaves that have been snapped off, like where they've been eaten, which they're high in vitamin C and fiber. And we're looking around, and I'm seeing all this sign of where something was. And then in the thermal footage, when you watch it, it looks like this thing just vanishes. It takes step, gone. We found out real quick why it looks like that. There's about a 5.5, 6 foot drop off where you're in the creek, you're walking on the creek bed, and it just drops straight down in elevation. That'll basically be a waterfall if the water was moving. And this thing stepped right off of that and was gone. And we found that because I stepped right off of it, and you can see me in the frame stepping off, and I'm having to grab a tree that's about 5 or 6 inches around to aid me so I don't break my ankles.
Oh my god.
And so that is then trying to get back out. Oh god, that was awful trying to get back out of there because it was so steep. We're dealing with something that was like the hillside was like this.
Wow.
It was pretty gnarly. Let's put it that way.
And so it was difficult to get up out of, more so than in, because like I said, I fell and slid 60 feet.
Yeah.
And getting back up was tough. There's no way that somebody was moving around down there with no light, because we had infrared cameras as well. It wasn't just the thermal. We had an infrared night vision camera. And that would have, any light, if somebody had a match down there, it would have honed in on that and it would illuminate it.
Yeah.
There was whatever it was down there with no light. Then the getting back out and in, there was just no way to do it safely for anybody that didn't do this on a day-to-day basis. Barefoot, in the dark.
That is crazy.
Now,
Yeah, that's wild.
well, here's where it gets weirder.
Okay.
So that wraps
That was
up,
the wild side.
Yeah.
that wraps up our going out, recreating, and all that stuff. The night that Ron and I took a small little gang out with us, it was Jen and Jamie and
That's when you initially discovered the tracks.
and Danner was with us.
Danner was with us. Yeah.
That's when we initially discovered the tracks and discovered the pathway and all that stuff. We were walking back out, and it was at dusk, late dusk, so it was really, really starting to be like the twilight zone, or twilight time, not twilight zone.
I don't know.
Well, yeah,
Kinda
Twilight
So I say, hey, give me the thermal. I want to see it, because I hadn't played with it anywhere other than at my house.
Oh, yeah.
So I just grab it. I look up at the sky, because I remember when I was in the Air Force, occasionally we'd have the thermal equipment. We'd look up at the sky and we'd see weird stuff. We just wouldn't talk about it. Sure enough, bam.
What was weirder, though, is you saw that right before what happened. As we were walking out the path.
Oh, yeah. Right before, as we were walking out, Ron's little pocket Geiger counter started.
Actually, I told Danner, so you can't blame me this time, but I told Danner to call off numbers if they went over 35, to call off numbers, And we're having a conversation. And, this is the weird thing about, and you guys probably noticed this, as you are discussing things or talking amongst yourself, this is when some of your best evidence kind of manifests itself. And it's very strange. It'll be a voice, or, a reading on a meter, or, EVP, something like that. And we're having this discussion, and our comms started going kind of wonky. And we're getting out of there because it was getting dark. And honestly, all we had was, 2 cell phones.
We had 2 cell phones, and I didn't have my flashlight, and my cell phone died.
We weren't out there. We weren't going out there to stay that long. That's what's the most important thing to remember. We were just going out there to sight this out, see how hard it was to get down in that valley, and to make plans to come back if we had to, which we did. But as we were walking down that path, Danner calls out after I think the comms had made some kind of weird noise. He's like, "It just went to 40." Like, what? And then it just went right back down.
Yeah.
And okay, that's a little odd. That's 2 times the background radiation, by the way. That's gamma radiation. And then it just disappeared. It was a nice spike. It was there, and then it was gone. And
So then we're out in the parking lot.
Out in the
I
parking
look
lot.
up with the thermal, and we spot this little tic-tac egg-shaped thing just bolting across the sky at Mach Jesus. This thing is just going, and it goes from one horizon to the next.
It's got to be a plane. I'm thinking it's a plane, right? That's a plane.
Yeah, but there's no indicator lights.
It's not a plane.
It was moving, and then it also does this weird little like loop-de-loop thing, and then goes over the horizon and is gone. So bugs won't go over the horizon. You can't track a bug with that thing over the horizon. You can track them immediately, because we started trying to debunk it
Well, you saw another one.
instantly.
And then Danner wanted to see. So Danner takes the thing, and this is where we got some of our best footage. Danner takes the thing, and he points it at the sky, and I don't even know. I mean, there was just multiples just zipping around.
Yeah, there were 3 or 4.
It was insane. I mean, you can watch the video. It's crazy.
Wow.
But And we're thinking that's got to be birds. That's got to be this or that. And I'm thinking it's birds. We debunked the insect, like you said, pretty much right there on the spot.
We wound up debunking the birds within a couple days.
I begged people to tell me they were birds, and the only person who would tell me they were birds, was Ben Hansen. And
but then he also said, "But send me a copy of that."
Yeah, he didn't know. He has no idea. None of us do.
Yeah.
So that's an ongoing investigation.
It then, because I told Ron, I said, the reason I didn't think much of it when I saw it, I was like, oh, hey, look. And then they pulled up their phones and were looking, is because I had seen this stuff before. It wasn't foreign, it wasn't anything new. And I almost expected it. I mean, I did it out of just habit. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, thermal man, ha-ha. Let's look up the sky. Yeah. And then Ron took it with him to the beach. Had the same thing happen at the beach. We had it happen out front of my house. We had it happen at his house. And these are nights when it's like exceptionally cold.
Only in clear nights.
Not insects.
Only on clear nights.
Yeah, you can only see it on clear nights because the clouds obscure everything. Like, you got to think, you're using a thermal imager, right? Clouds are insulators. That's why we don't have super duper crazy cold nights when there's a lot of cloud cover. But when we have a really clear night, that's when everything freezes and turns to ice and everything gets crazy cold. So we have these insulator clouds that are holding heat from the daytime sun. They're acting as a shield. It's a massive barrier. You cannot see through it with your thermal imager.
Well, even if they're moving in front of it, you're not going to see it, probably, because they're white, in the thermal imager.
Right.
Because they are hot,
They show up hot is what the indicator is. Like, if you've got it on red hot, you're going to get red blips. You got it on black hot, they're going to be black. You got it white hot, they're showing up white. They would show up, I think, against the clouds because they would be the hot objects. So then your clouds would turn black. It just depends on how fast they're moving.
Wow.
Yeah.
But normally these things, like, what we're assuming is that we're dealing with something that's at a much higher altitude and is above the cloud bank and is moving at an incredible rate of speed.
I have no idea.
What do you guys think when you see that? Like, if it's common, how does that make you feel? Knowing, all right, there's definitely this out there, but what's your opinion
of the documentation and the data that is freely available to anyone?
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. Honestly, I think that there's something here. There's something that's been here for a very long time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we're not discovering this. We're just rediscovering it or remembering for some reason. I have no idea why it's been, kind of whitewashed. But it may be because of its after effects. It's possibility that that's the issue. I really don't know.
Well, like Ron had said, this, in light of all the recent news, that was another thing why I was just like, there it is. Is because the news is basically, if you're following anything with the UFO phenomena or the UAP phenomena, we're having government hearings on it. We're having this small scale disclosure. Like, it honestly, in our opinion, disclosure happened.
No, it's happened. Yeah.
They've said, it's there. We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So the part where everybody's waiting for this disclosure to occur, where there's this thing lands on the White House lawn, is not going to happen. The government just acknowledged that there is technology that is moving that is not man-made, and we don't know where it's at, where it's from, but we seem to be trying to provoke it for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's exactly what you just said. We do seem to be trying to provoke it. We don't even know what it is. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Why do you think now, like, it's such a buzz in the news? Like, why now? Why not, like, years ago?
Well, you had the Nimitz encounter. That's what started it, that Nimitz leak. And when they had to acknowledge that, this was actually a leaked footage from official secret source, it shouldn't have made it public. Then you had people starting to dig their teeth, right? This was something that just satiated an appetite or created an appetite. in culture, and they're like, we want more of this, we want to see more of this. Then what really set it off was the whole national security threat aspect. Now it's suddenly a problem. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not a bunch of wackos running around here with tinfoil hats. This is something that's shutting down our nuclear facilities for long periods of time, and we have no control over them. That's a problem. And when you have something that's doing that frequently, multiple times, all around the world, it kind of forces the hand to say something. And then, you've got to report some of this stuff. And then all of a sudden you've got these old stories of old UFO sightings that are suddenly coming out in the media, where Project Blue Book or Grudge had already dealt with it and thrown it under the rug. We really find out was that, they did investigate it. This actually did happen. And yes, this person suffered from radiation burns. It's not good news. It's not a good. This isn't something like, oh, today we discovered this. So you're not running with it that way. It's more scary. It's more terrifying, and that's why people are wanting answers, and they're kind of getting some answers here and there. It's spread out, but I think the implications of them being here is the big problem.
Well, I think
that's what people are telling us.
What you just said, the implications of them being here, or the implications of them actually manifesting in more than just a flash or whatever we're seeing out there right now. I think there's going to come a point when something's going to happen that's so big that it simply can't be covered up. It can't be denied. And that's where we're moving toward. You ask why after 75 years, the same question I asked, why after 75 years? It makes no sense. Would you fast track the public to accepting this, and the media to accepting this? And you've seen it as well as I have. During the beginning of the 2017 reveal, there were still little green men from Mars. These the media loved to play the game and make fun of these people, and now they're not laughing so much. They're not laughing so much at all, because we're seeing that there's really something there. And the only reason that you would adjust the entire paradigm is because you think something is going to happen to where you need them to know, so they don't freak out and start ordering toilet paper and toothpaste and God knows what else.
Yeah,
because we've already seen that happen.
Oh, it was a dry run.
What's it gonna be when suddenly we have
we're not
invaders?
Yeah, exactly.
It seems like they have no control now. That's why they're so open with discussing it, because
they're not in control.
The
government's not in control of this anymore, in my opinion. I think that's what changed.
Right.
What's definitely crazy too is that it's not just our government. Like it's not just
Russia,
America.
China, North Korea.
It's the whole world that is involved in this.
Yeah. And Brazil has led the charge on this for ages. Brazil and Central America and South America. They've been wide open discussing it in the news since the 70s.
Wow.
Okay.
So they were kind of already like, UFO sighting in this town, blah, 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 blah. And it was just normal.
Yeah.
But you're banging your head up against the wall until the paradigm shifted.
Yep.
So what is the connection with Bigfoot and aliens?
Is there one?
Yeah, it's a good question, because we're sorry.
You're good.
I honestly, we can see a trail that leads to the possibility that something is emulating a Bigfoot. I think it's interesting to note that you could be dealing with two separate things here. I know some people think it's one or the other, but we could be talking about two separate things. And we could also be talking, let's go into, let's hypothesize a little here. Let's say that whatever this thing is, say there is an intelligence. It has been here for thousands of years. Predates us. Well, for all it knows, maybe it thinks that Bigfoot or whatever it was, that's a common thing. It's no different than a bear or a deer or anything else. And so there's evidence that suggests that these entities, beings, intelligence, call them what you will, can sort of make you see whatever. Stimulate the what's it called, Joe? The image center of the brain, right? So if they stimulate the image center of the brain, then there's this possibility that they're making you witness or see something that it may not be what it is. It's the mask, as Valet says. It's the mask.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Okay.
Now, are they related? I could not honestly tell you. I know a lot of people think that I believe that we're talking about the one and the same thing, but I really don't think we're talking about one and the same thing. I think there is enough room for the whole flesh and blood Bigfoot, as well as this ethereal or whatever it is, Bigfoot. Until we figure it out, we're simply not going to know. And honest to goodness, guys, I don't know that we ever will know.
Yeah.
Wow. What's some of the evidence that you've seen, both mainly a Bigfoot, that you've been like, wow? I know with the thermal, that's got to be pretty damning evidence for you, but what are some things where you've been like, this is pretty undeniable to me?
I'm going to have to say that, honestly, and I tell this story a lot, but when I came into this, I was not a Bigfoot person. I believed it. I believed the stories. I believe everyone, I would never say, oh, you made that up.
There's no way.
Yeah, I mean, there's something there. There's evidence that there's something there. But I never knew that it was so prevalent, I guess would be the word.
Yeah.
I had no idea it would be so prevalent that you could literally, if you know what to look for, you might have a good chance of finding it. It's no different than finding a bear or anything else if you know the habitats of it. But I think the best evidence for me was when we went to Wineberry, and that's in Wyoming County. That's sort of just an incredible case. Honestly, we had a witness out there who had a sighting, and again, not going to find any evidence. We're going out there to document her story because, and you were talking about your dad and the stories that he has. Try to get those stories. It's so important to keep these stories, and that was our goal. We wanted to go and get this story from this witness and just put it in the data, because it's important. It could lead to something in the future. So we go up there and we meet with her, and she tells us the story, and it sounds good. So we do a little recreation and whatnot, and I'm thinking this is great, and she takes us to this place where she had heard some stuff before, and it gives her a bad feeling. Like, she's really terrified to go in these woods. And at first she was not going to go, but she's like, well, I'll go with you guys. I went, okay. So she goes out with us. We're on this one area where we named it Wineberries because there's this patch of thicket of wineberries there. And as we're out there, we hear something up on the ridge several hundred feet above us. And it literally sounded like somebody took a very heavy, like a tree or a piece of wood, and just banged on the side of the tree, and then threw it. Because you hear the bang, and then you hear the whoosh,
Is that one of the signs of like a Bigfoot, like they hit trees or something like that?
Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's just crazy. And as we were coming back out there, we could hear something up on that ridge, and it was whatever was up there was kind of following us. Is our theory, right? So before we leave that evening, Joe's like, well, I want to check this field out. There's this big field where they had just tried to put some. They were trying to put some seeds down and get some grass growing in there. It's kind of muddy and mucky, and he wanted to check for some tracks there. Made sense. So we went down there and we saw a few depressions in the ground. Nothing good and solid. And we continued on, and he was like, okay, I think I got something. I'm like, all right. So in the middle of this path, there's this little puddle of water, and you can make out what it looks like toes, and it looks like, a footprint. And we've been down this path before, and it's like, man, I don't want to get my hopes up, So he cast it, and for 40 minutes I sat in the car or in the truck while this is setting up, and I'm thinking, man, I want this to be toes, but at the same time I'm like, don't get excited.
Yeah,
Don't get excited. And we go out there, and he pries it out of the ground nervously. I'm filming this whole thing. It's all documented. I filmed the whole thing, documented it all. That's what we do with our investigations. We document them. And you can hear it come out of the ground, and I'm thinking, oh my God, he broke it. But it's the grass that's popping,
Yeah.
And as soon as it comes out of the ground, you see this massive toe. And I'm like, wow. That was the first actual good set of toes that we pulled out of the ground. And when I saw that, I was like, wow. I mean, he had got the ones from Kanawha State. They look pretty good too, but they are in the lines of a little bit of a smaller creature. This thing is huge. This thing is like 15, 16 inches long. To me, that's what I think of when I hear Bigfoot. I mean, they're not all that big. There are some that are a little bit smaller, but this thing is massive, whatever it is. And that kind of changed my mind on a few things,
Of course.
And I hadn't seen anything, though, of course. And then it was in 2020, and we were actually on a little bit of a break. We had come back from doing an investigation, a follow-up investigation. It was the investigation where we actually returned to Kanawha State Forest because someone had heard something barreling through the woods the day before we got out there. And as we're out there, we found the spot where it was and whatnot. And it's also where we found those weird radioactive tracks, which, this was the first time we ran into that, so we didn't really understand that. And we were talking about that. We're on vacation, we're talking about it. We're going to film the end of our little video or documentary and say, what we feel about that. And we do. And so Joe's cooking, and as he's cooking, I keep hearing these sounds down in this valley. And I'm like, what in the world? This can't be happening. This is not real, And I get him back up after we eat. We sit on the porch and we listen, and we do hear it. And what it amounts to, long story short, is something was down in those woods, down in this big valley in front of us. We're on the back of this deck looking down into this dark valley. And to the left of us, we hear some sounds. And to the right of us, we hear some sounds. And off in the distance, we hear some crazy stuff. There's like dogs barking and whatnot, and then the dogs just go silent. It's very weird. And so he shines a light down in the valley, and there's, nothing there. And then he hears what it sounds like. We all hear it. We both hear it. And it sounds like a female voice speaking, but it's not really speaking in words. It's more of a gibberish. And yes, at the time I had no idea what the Sierra sounds were. And after I would hear those, I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty close. I mean, it's almost like it had the cadence of speaking, but it would just switch to, I speak out like that.
Oh.
But it's like, what in the world am I hearing? You think you can make out the words, but there's no words.
Wow.
It's not that you can understand. And so as we're standing there, looking down there, all of a sudden there's this light that comes on off to the side of us. I'm like, what's that? And Joe's like, what? There's a light just came on. He's like, no, the light's been on. I'm like, I don't think so. And then all of a sudden the light goes off, and I'm like, he's like, that's a motion light. Okay. So next phase of the craziness starts, and we go around the back of the house now, off the deck of the back of the house into the pasture area, and we found there's a motion light back there. And if you're about, what, Joe, 30, 35 feet from it, the light comes, powers up.
It's a 40-foot sensor, I think. 40 foot's really pressing it.
Mm-hmm. So it powers up to full, and then it goes back down. And we tested that a few times. Like, okay, well, something was here, that did that, I guess. We just couldn't figure out what it was. And so we leave. We walk back around the fence, And before we go back inside or back onto the deck, Joe has his light and he shines it, and he's shining the beam across. I'm watching the beam, and as I see it, as the beam comes over, something does this number, and it's really big. It was a really, really, really big silhouette of something that still doesn't make sense to me. Very broad shoulders, in not a proportional head at all on this thing. It goes down, and I'm like, oh my God. So I grab the light and I start trying to recreate this. It's like, that's a trick of light and shadow. It couldn't have been real. That was not real. I couldn't recreate it. And about that time, Joe looks at me. He's like, we got to go. We got to go right now. And
yeah, and the reason I was saying is that it's because it wasn't like I wasn't scared.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was.
There was like, I got this sensation that I had peed my pants.
Yeah.
And I didn't, thank God. But I had the sensation that I had. And that was just bizarre. And it also felt like this humming, like this, like a resonant frequency, like a boom kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's why I
heard that. So
yeah, Ron actually heard it. I felt it.
Yeah. Yeah, he got the full brunt of whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, let's go. So we backed off and, watched the field walking backwards as we're going. And we get back inside. And as I'm going in, he went in first. As I'm closing the door, I can hear that sound. And I've described it. And it sounds like a bunch of hornets off in the distance run through a heavy reverb unit. And when I say that, people who know what it is, they're just like, they know what that means. I have no idea what that meant. I still really don't know what that means. But the night just got weirder.
Yeah, so while we're there, this is, it's a family farm. We're out there all the time. And my youngest son had been out there, our oldest son now had been out there with us multiple times. And we start hearing what sounds like him crying. And I heard it. My wife was hearing it. Ron's wife was hearing it. And I kept poking my head, checking. He's still out cold.
I never heard it.
Just out like a light. And we think that whatever this thing was replicating and emulating my son's crying to get us to come back outside.
Oh.
Yeah, I think whatever it was wanted us to come back outside, and that was not happening.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So the next morning, we're like, okay, let's go out and figure out what was going on. So I go out. Joe's already out there. He's up there in the field when I get up, and he's looking around. And I'm feeling pretty good because what I saw this big giant thing go down by, it ducked down in these like these little, I thought it was tall grass, It's not tall grass at all. It's very, very short. It's probably just a couple of feet. And I see Joe out there walking around. I'm like, oh, thank goodness. It was a trick of light and shadow. There's no way. I mean, you can't do that. And he's like, okay, go to that position that you were. I'm like, okay. Hold the camera up, He's like, all right, how's this look? And he just disappears.
The field actually had a really steep drop off at that point. And it was very walkable, obviously, because I did it backwards. But it was at a steep incline where just a couple steps and you're below the ridge. And whoever's standing on the other side, you can still see them. I could still see Ron, but he couldn't see me.
Yeah. That thing had clear sniping position
below the
of us.
line of the weeds.
Yeah. It was watching us. Whatever it was straight on. It was watching us. I don't know. Now that, you asked for the strongest bit of evidence, I think that was probably the one that really struck home with me more than any of them.
I'm in shock.
Yeah. Is that the scariest moment you guys had? What's the scariest moment?
The scariest moment wasn't due to fear. It wasn't due to like something happened. Oh God, we're scared. Like it wasn't like that. It was more like, okay, why is this happening? This shouldn't be here. What kind of implications could this have on our well-being?
Okay.
That kind of fear, because it was radiation related.
Oh God. Where was
Yeah,
that
it's
at?
different when you're out there and you start picking up things like that, and it's like this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And Joe he's convinced at this time, by the way, that this thing is flesh and blood that we're chasing. It's not, there's nothing weird about this.
I still, to a degree, because I know that you guys had asked the question a little bit ago before I had to walk off. Sorry about that, by the way.
Are you good? No, that's okay.
I still think that there is a flesh and blood creature out there.
I think there is too.
I also think there's something else.
Yep.
And
that's emulating. That's emulating a flesh and blood creature.
Yes. I was really dismissive of a lot of that. Is really where I was at. I was dismissive of a lot of the weird, more paranormal kind of Bigfoot stuff. And this report came in. We actually made it there within 2 hours. And because of the time we were there so quickly, we were able to really assess the scene and make out what was going on. And we were able to establish exactly where this person had the sighting, because their sighting was this large dark figure went running down the hillside making all kinds of noise. And this is like early morning sighting, or just before afternoon, because we got there at around noon. And they were out there doing their morning jog or whatever, and this thing ran down into the bottom, and then she said it had to have taken off up the hill, because that's when she lost it. Well, the problem with that is where she lost it was the hill is almost vertical, and there's also a fence on it, and the fence was still intact. So we're trying to figure out where this thing went. I'm out there looking on the ground trying to find trace evidence of footprints, what kind of tracks maybe she saw a bear, because large dark object. And what's interesting is that we did find bear tracks. We also found tracks that weren't bear tracks. Both the bear and the thing that we can't identify were also carrying some amounts of trace radiation.
Higher than background.
Yeah, like much higher than background.
Wow.
Like it was double the background level.
Wow.
And we couldn't figure out why that was happening, what was going on.
When was that? How long ago was that?
That was it would have been. It was 2020, yeah. But it was
Two or 3 days.
2 or 3 days before we went out to the farm.
Yeah. It was just a few days before,
because we were actually shooting
the incident.
Analysis of everything for our channel, and updating with the information when everything weird started happening there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, do you also do paranormal investigations?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What's one that sticks out the most?
Probably the shadow being that I tried to chase, that everybody asked me, am I crazy? I think that was a good one. That was yeah, that was a good one. We were on this was before Joe's involvement.
The olden days.
Yeah. This is the Ghost Watch days, and I think still it's probably one of the best visuals that I've had of anything like that. Maybe. I mean, there's other things, but I wasn't investigating when I saw that. But this was on a dead-end floor, on the 3rd floor. Big freight elevator is the only way to get up there. The whole team was up there, and we had a professional cameraman running with us at the time. He was filming the stuff, and we're up there, and I know everybody's up there. And as we come around this corner, I see this black form, just like somebody walking. I mean, it just looks like someone walking. I'm like, wait, huh? So I turned around and ran toward it, and they thought I'd lost my mind because they didn't see anything. They saw nothing, actually, at all. No one in the group saw anything. And they said, he's lost it. He's chasing, a reflection, but there was no reflection either. And when I went around the corner expecting this person to be there, there's nothing there. I'm like, oh my, well, this is different. And we caught, like I said, there's no evidence whatsoever. So what do you do with that? I think that's one of the cooler ones. I worked in a store that was haunted as crap, dude. I mean, you would go in there, there'd be stuff flying across the store, across the floor. Every morning there was things on the floor. You'd think, oh, maybe it's just a mouse. There's no mouse. We had one customer who came up to us and told us to thank that helpful young lady who helped her pick out a card. It was a card store. I'm like, there's no lady in here who helped you pick out a card.
Oh my gosh.
But I didn't tell her that.
Yeah.
These things, it was common. And so none of that stuff really bothered me. And it's just, I grew up with it, I guess, And the whole tales of the weird stuff. But, yeah. And you asked about the fear thing. I think I'll go with it because, Joe's over there like, why aren't you telling that story? Okay, I will. It's not fear, though. And I think you're right. I think it taps into something else, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just this uneasiness. But this was in the late 90s, 99, somewhere around in there. And me and my wife were coming home from visiting my parents. And this is the one that was in Mothman Legacy. And that's why I was in it. Because as we were coming around this curve, this part wasn't in Mothman Legacy because she decided she doesn't want to be in the movie. So, it's just me. And I completely forgot about this. But as we came around this curve, we smelled what smelled like roses or perfume or something. It was kind of odd. And as we go around the curb, we smell that. I'm like, hey, you smell that? And about that time, my light hit something in the road. And this thing in the road is kind of a grayish kind of thing. I'm like, at first thought, I'm thinking, dang, that is a really big, like a vulture or something, just crouched down in the road. And as I'm watching it, like it stands up, and I'm like, oh, geez, that's not a vulture. And it's tall. It's really tall. But more impressive than that is it puts out its arms or appendages or whatever they are, and they touch the other side of the road. And as it does that, and its wings out or arms or whatever, it makes one movement, and that's straight down, and it shoots straight up. As the wings come down, it shoots straight up. And I mean, like, it's there and it's gone. And we hear, the twigs falling from the trees and whatnot. I hit the gas, and I don't think I've ever been afraid of it. That much fear, adrenaline, call it what you will, but it just hit at the primal level. I don't even know what it was.
I was going to say it was primal fear. Right?
Yeah,
it was
fight or flight.
When a squirrel
fear.
sees a bear.
Like when a squirrel sees a bear, for example.
Yeah.
That was cut from the movie. We'd actually made I worked up a little graphic of a terrified squirrel seeing a bear.
Nice.
Because when me and his wife, she immediately messaged me. All she sent me was primal
In the
fear.
interview. I'm being
When a
interviewed
squirrel sees
by
a bear.
small-town monsters, and I say that. She hears it, and she's over there texting him. I'm like, you won't believe what he just said.
It was great.
You guys.
Oh, that's so funny.
You're terrible. But no, for real, that was very strange, and I think it puts you in an uncomfortable place, just like with the radiation rating and Joe. It just wrecks your paradigm because it's like I've seen things.
That incident forced me to change my perspective on stuff because right after that, I started a real big deep dive on the different Bigfoot accounts that I've been dismissing for years. And trying to find congruencies, trying to find parallels with other accounts that were of more bizarre instances. And one of the things that I did find is that oftentimes these Bigfoot-like creatures, because there's no word for it, so the lexicon's broken, so we just use Bigfoot-like as a term until they come up with something else.
Isn't Woodbooger like a name for Bigfoot?
Woodbooger is a name for Bigfoot.
Okay.
And that's one of our events too.
Well, it's down your way, actually. That's Virginia name, right?
Oh, really?
It's Virginia and West Virginia, yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
on the border.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so these other strange instances where you're getting these descriptions where people are actually seeing a good account, they're describing something that is much different than what I saw, and also what you've seen in the Patterson-Gimlin film. You're seeing these things that they're gaunt, really long arms, like almost touching the ground. The hair is far more sparse. Oftentimes the eyes are glowing like on their own. No eye shine, nothing like that. It's like they're actually emitting light. There have been sightings of some that were actually carrying these little spheres of light, and they had that different look to them. They didn't look like your typical Bigfoot. Then you also have in those same accounts, back to the sphere of light, you have all these orb accounts, and that is something that we're not sure what that phenomena is. I've experienced it. We don't know if it is UFO, UAP related, if it is paranormal related, if it is all the above, but we know it happens.
And let's define orbs, Joe.
So we're not talking about these orbs like you see on a photograph. Like with paranormal investigators, they go out and they take a picture in a dark room and it's covered with dust, and you've got all these little, there's a ghost of so and so right there.
Right.
Nothing like that. This is actually a intelligent sphere of light. It is generally described as being anywhere from like softball to beach ball sized, moving in the tree line, in the forest. Normally these aren't seen up in the air above the canopy. These little spheres of light are something that people are seeing like closer to the ground, moving in and out of the trees. And that's what we're talking about when we say an orb. That is what we're talking about, is this weird light phenomena that is taking place, and these lights seem to be sentient. When we were filming with Finding Bigfoot, I was out on the ridgeline. I just took Ron there the other day to the exact location and showed him where I witnessed this thing and watched it bolt over. Me and the camera guy had both seen it. Cliff was using his thermal and he was looking over to the left into this area where we had heard some howls come from. And me and the camera guy didn't think anything of it because we were kind of running low on batteries, and we thought that somebody from the road crew was bringing us batteries back from base camp. Well, as we're watching this thing, this couple seconds take place, this light comes near us. It's almost like it realizes that we see it, and then it bolts down off the trail straight down into the ravine. And Ron's now seeing the terrain there. Once you go over off the trail, there's like a little landing, and then it is straight down for about 1,200 feet. It practically straight down.
If anyone's out there at 2 o'clock in the morning or even after dark, and it gets dark out there fast. It was getting dark when we were out there.
Yeah.
So I'd say after 8, 9 o'clock, you go over that hill, you're dead, because it's a flat drop straight down.
Yeah.
And we radioed back like, hey, is there anybody? Somebody just went over the hills, or somebody coming out here with a headlamp? And they're like, no, everybody's here. Everybody's accounted for. So we were like, okay, that's weird. And Cliff asked what we'd seen, and Cliff was like, what'd you see? Because Cliff was saying we saw Bigfoot, because we'd had a knock really close to that point. We'd heard multiple howls at that point. And then he's thinking we seen one cross the trail. We might have had it on camera. And the camera guy's like, no, that is not what we saw. And I'm like, that is not, no. We saw a ball of light. And he was like, well, I know enough about the will-o'-the-wisp to know that we shouldn't follow that. So let's go ahead and start heading back to base camp. and that's what we did. And, that never made it into the TV because the TV show is called Finding Bigfoot, not Finding Weird Lights in the Forest.
It still would have been a great addition.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was the second thing that happened to me that forced me into a paradigm shift of looking at these things from a different perspective. That, we were probably right. This is a secondary phenomena. And the more we've researched these things and the more reports we've gathered and the more time we've spent in the field, we are more often than not finding that subject A is showing up in the same place that the subject B is. But when you're out looking for subject A, you're going to find subject B before you find subject A.
To me, it is almost like, if you play the game, right? It's almost like if this is an alien presence, they're not studying us; they're studying Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you see these lights, these probes, or whatever they may be, and then you see the Bigfoot. Well, you have two options: either they're A, studying a physical creature, or B, you're looking at something and thinking you're seeing Bigfoot. So,
Yeah.
which one is it?
Screen image.
Yeah, like a screen image.
So you have this theory that what you encounter is connected with something else? Like that's all connected somehow?
That's the related phenomena theory, and honest to goodness,
What those relations are, we don't know.
we don't know what the relations are.
Yeah.
But
we
we've
see
seen
a pattern.
too much.
There's a
We've
pattern.
seen
It
too
can't
much
be
to
denied.
ignore it.
Yeah, it can't be denied. I don't think it can be denied. And people who don't want to believe it, okay, so belief, it's like what happened to me. You know, belief is a matter of faith, and data doesn't care, as Joe says, about your feelings or your faith.
Yeah.
It is just there. So you've got to figure out how this works. And when I say a belief system, I don't mean like spiritual or religious. I'm talking about, well, it is to some people, but what I'm referring to is a belief that we know. Science has told us what this is and what's possible, and that's all that it'll ever be. It's just not that simple. I mean, if you look at the data, you can't say it's that simple anymore.
Yeah, the data, you either have to throw the data out with the bathwater and completely ignore it, or you have to accept the fact that we don't have a single iota of what's going on out there. We don't understand in the slightest. I do think that there is a large flesh and blood creature, because what I observed was very normal, very mundane, even though it is very, fascinating. The behavior was extremely normal for a creature that would be spending its time out in the forest.
Yeah.
Foraging for food, digging for grubs, things like that. That's normal wildlife stuff. And what we're seeing with this other phenomena is that it's definitely not doing normal wildlife stuff. And we can't dismiss all of it. We can go out, we actually do try to debunk everything that comes across our table.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Right.
We do our absolute best to do our due diligence and actually dissect everything. And what we're left with is data points.
Literally just question everything.
Yeah. What we're left with is data points on a spreadsheet. And when we look at this data, we have evidence that supports a physical creature, which is what everybody calls Bigfoot. We have evidence that supports the UFO, UAP phenomena. We have evidence that supports these paranormal aspects of hauntings and these different poltergeist activities or weird spiritual activity. We have evidence of all those things. But there are multiple convergence points where all of those things are happening in the same place at the same time. And what do you do with that? When you are faced with that, and if you're a researcher worth your salt, when you are faced with that evidence, what you do with that evidence is really going to determine your outlook going forward. Because you can't say, oh well, this was faked. No, we have scientific instrumentation that has been recorded, because we double record everything. We've got data
Multiple
points.
validations.
Oh yeah.
We're recording with cameras when all this stuff's going on. We're making sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and that there's no way that we could be just fabricating this data. And we show other people, like, we're out here doing this thing, look what we got.
Right. Do you think that maybe you, like, even us, we put ourselves in positions like that, do you think after a while, like, that stuff, attaches to you? That's why you experience it more?
I don't know so much that it attaches itself. I'm sure, there's obviously the whole attachment theory. People say they brought things home with them, whatnot. It's like the hitchhiker effect. And then there's also what we call the beacon effect, which is once you're open to a phenomena, you might not necessarily be attracting it as much as it is suddenly you are aware.
You're more capable of seeing it.
Yeah, gotcha. You're aware that it's there, so now you're paying more attention.
Yeah.
Like when you walk through, I can walk through my house, unless my toddler's known his toys all about. I can walk through my house in the dark because I have stubbed and broken so many toes walking through my house in the dark that I now know where all my furniture sits.
Yeah.
Because I have the data points to prove it.
That's a great metaphor. Yeah.
So I can walk through and navigate my living room and from my bedroom to the kitchen in the dark without kicking anything unless something's been thrown in the way that wasn't there like normally. But I know where all my stuff's at. I can walk through and walk back, no problem.
Personally, I think
that's because I've observed with my sensory parts.
That's with your sensory parts, yes. But there are those who have another sense, and I believe that those people are very much more attuned to some aspects of these phenomena as well. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. That's
a popular thought.
Yeah, there's actually documentation on that at this point as well.
Yeah, we know a guy that we're pretty good friends with. I cut his hair today. He has the gift of, seeing the other side and stuff. I mean...
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. They just choose to ignore it.
Yeah.
And so, again, we're dealing with totally different phenomena here. Like, Ron's been out with me enough in the woods to know now, like, he knows what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
When we go out and we're looking for sign, we're looking for tracks, he knows what to look for. And when I started pointing these things out to him, he was like, I never imagined that it was so prevalent, that it was literally, we're going to find it basically anytime we go out in the woods. We're going to find some sign that is not a bear, but is a possible anomaly. And that's a physical aspect. That's physical awareness. That's situational surroundings, your situational awareness. You're paying attention to what's on the ground in front of you. You're paying attention to the surroundings more in depth.
Yeah.
Then you have the spiritual side of things, where you have people who are sensitive, people who can see, clairvoyance, etc. And they're sensitive on a whole different level, because we could take that same person who's a clairvoyant out into the woods, say, find a Bigfoot track, and they're just going to, look around until they have that physical understanding. Same thing with the other side, with the spiritual understanding. You have to have that understanding of the supernatural, spiritual side of things. And then once you have that, then your awareness in the supernatural, spiritual is heightened, and you're more aware. You're more able to tap into or see or express.
I can personally attest to that. I was so against. I didn't want to experience anything. Like, I love this, but I'm also, you guys aren't afraid. I am. I do get scared.
I put him in, scary situations.
He puts me in these situations.
You should always put
a good friend
in harm's way.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
And it wasn't until recently that after, you do it a while, it was after, I think, our first paranormal investigation that I was like, I think I felt something. Especially at the first paranormal investigation, as we were leaving, it felt like I felt a hand on my back as we were leaving the graveyard, walking away. Like something was almost, either maybe patting me on the back or something like that. And then most recently, we were sitting and having a conversation, and a flashlight was set up in the back. And as we were having this conversation, wasn't really looking for anything, just conversation. I just so happened to look up, and the flashlight shines right in my eyes. And I was like, okay, this is...
So how many coincidences does it take till you have to look at that data and say something intelligent is happening here?
Yeah. And I think, as we were talking about growing up, right before we came here, I was telling my grandmother that we were going to be talking to you guys, and we just started talking about paranormal and stuff. We started talking about Bigfoot, and she said, do you believe, if someone came to you and said that they saw Bigfoot, what would you say? And I said, well, I would say yes. And she's like, because whenever I was in nursing school and everyone had gone for vacation and I heard these footsteps upstairs, and when I woke up the next morning, the headmistress came and asked me if I was walking around, I started to realize maybe there's something there. And I told her, like, even from a young age, I was like, that is crazy. And if someone can tell you something and they remember the exact moment, you know, they can tell you everything about the situation they were in, you know, how's that not, you know, it would take so much for all these people to come up with a lie about this.
Well, you know, my grandmother on the other side of my family had a similar recounting with me, where she had seen a Bigfoot cross the road in front of her back whenever she was going to it was a free computer class that they were offering for, like, you know, people who were older. Mm-hmm. This was back when computers were first becoming like a in-home fixture. And so she was going to a community college to go and learn these, how to type, how to look on the internet, things like that. And on her way home, she saw this creature. She said it was like a big gorilla, and it came across the road and stretched its arm up around, like, at full length. Where this is at is right around 12 feet from the road to the next, because it's a switchback. So you're going up the mountain like this, you know. And she was on one of the switchbacks going up, and this thing reached up, grabbed the guardrail on the next switchback up, and pulled itself up the side of the hill. And, you know, she's like, once she found out that I was into all this Bigfoot stuff, she's like, I've never told anybody this before in my life. And she's like, I can tell you because you've already gone on TV telling everybody.
Right. I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where people were, you know, hesitant to tell their story.
Once everyone knows that you wear the tinfoil hat, they're perfectly fine telling you any crazy thing they've ever experienced.
Yeah. It only takes one person to step forward, and then you have the others who will say, hey, well, I did too. There's a lot of me tooers. There's waiting for someone to come out and lead, and you know, that's what we have to do. Disclosure starts at home. It doesn't start with like Joe said, you know, a mothership landing on the White House, or you know, something like that. It's not like that. Disclosure starts with your community.
One of the ways that we show people this is when we're doing presentations at these big events. We took a card that Stanton Friedman kind of handed down to us. Was when we're closing our talk, we say, okay, now that you've heard all this stuff, now that you've heard our data, you've listened to what we've had to say, how many of you in this room have had an encounter? And then the room's quiet for a minute. Everything's real slow, and then one person raises their hand, then hands start going up all over the room, right? Then we say, how many of you guys told somebody about your story? A bunch of hands go down. Still some hands stay up. We say, okay, of the people who left their hands up, how many of you guys reported what you saw to an investigation team or anybody? Almost all the hands go down, with the exception of roughly it's between 5 and 10% every time we do it.
Wow.
Right.
And it just goes to show that people will have these encounters. They don't talk about them. They don't report them to anybody. And because they're just not comfortable. There's not that openness unless you know somebody like one of us who's into the weird stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's true.
And it's hard, like, for skeptics too. I mean, in-person experiences is one thing, but when you're able to capture stuff on these devices and present them to, you know, the skeptics or whatever, I mean, like, the graveyard investigation that we did in Giles came back, we looked over the recordings and stuff. I mean, we got recordings of little kids laughing in the graveyard. And that really affected me. I was
think
like,
we had some orbs or so.
We captured a apparition from behind me. So, like, the graveyard, it's called George Paris Cemetery. And he was like a captain or whatever in the was it Revolutionary War?
Yeah.
And he has his own grave set up, and there's brick laid out around it. Well, we were in the foundation or whatever, and my girlfriend has the camera like on the side of like my side, and the other side is the brick wall, and just maybe a second, a white apparition just appears and it disappears. So it's not, anything in the far distance or whatever. It was inside the foundation. We got that on camera too. It was just gnarly. Like that investigation was really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was our first one where we really, delved into it.
And it was
awesome.
the night it was raining, so like on the EVP it would suck. And then there was
too much white noise.
Yeah, and then traffic was just down the hill. So, but still, we were able to capture like little kids laughing.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Yeah,
but it's always good. You mentioned the skeptics.
Yeah,
some of my favorite, best friends are skeptics, and
exactly.
I need them. I don't need debunkers. I need skeptics. If we're going to debunk it, we're going to do it ourselves.
Yeah,
we're going to tear it apart. And absolutely, just like when I saw that thing duck, I mean, the first thing I did was grab the light and just try to recreate this. I'm like, this is not real. And, just trying to tear these things apart ourselves. That way, there's the data. And anyone who is skeptical or, wants to question it, the answers are there. I mean, I know we had someone who had responded to one of our things and said that, that looked like someone down in that valley with a backpack on or a kid strapped to their back.
Kid strapped to their back.
Somebody just called CPS.
Yeah.
That's turn of the year right there. Yeah, exactly. No, it's so, and then there's common sense as well. Well, could it be a bear? Well, I mean, I guess theoretically it could be a bear. It could be a radioactive bear too, because we obviously prove those exist too, but no one wants to believe that. So you see, this is where we're at with these things. We do need a new name for what is happening out there, I think.
Yeah, we do. Like I said earlier, the lexicon's broken. The English language just doesn't have the words for it.
Yeah.
I use this example a lot. In the Greek language, there's like 8 or 9 words for love.
Mm-hmm.
We have 1.
Mm-hmm.
And we're stuck in these words like, I had a Bigfoot sighting. Well, okay, what did it do? It levitated off the ground and it shot lasers out of its eyes.
Probably not Bigfoot.
Probably not Bigfoot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's something different.
Yeah.
We need better categories. And we try to create those, but we're not a massive community influence. Like, we've got our own little section, but we're not out there like the people carrying the flag saying, this is what we're calling this now. And everybody's like, yes, listen to them. They're right.
But it seems like you guys are killing it in West Virginia.
Yeah.
We're doing what we can.
It just seems like that.
I don't know.
West Virginia definitely, it seems, has the right nature for like the cryptids.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we do.
Which I was gonna ask, just about Bigfoot. Like, do you guys notice a migrating pattern, or like, do you notice a mating season that they have, or are they traveling in packs? What really is the existence of the Bigfoot that you guys are following?
Well,
Those are great questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, those are really good questions. I'm glad you asked those. Based off my sighting, I know that they at least move in small family groups, minimum small family groups.
Is that like 3 or 4?
Huh?
Would that be like 3 or 4, or?
Well, what I saw was 3. I mean, possible for more, I would imagine. But what I saw was 3. It was a big one that wasn't quite as big as the biggest one, and then one that was about the size of a 4 or 5-year-old kid. And so based off that, we found footprints in the same general area within a few miles. We found footprints that range anywhere from 16 to 18 inches all the way down to 8 inches. So that supports that theory as well. But also, I don't think it used to be a common thought or common in the Bigfoot world to think that these things were migrating, moving from north to south, similarly to how we see some other species move. However, the data now is reflecting something completely different. It looks as if these things are staying within a certain home range. We don't know what the home range is. There's assumptions out there with some of the leading thinkers, and with what we're collecting, the data that we're throwing out there, is it's looking to be, like 10 to 15 mile range seems to be a home range. And they're not going to go too terribly far outside of that, because that 10 to 15 mile area has water, it has food, it has shelter, it's got all the things that it needs to survive. So why would you migrate in and out? You just rough it out like everything else, rough out the winters. Spring's coming soon. Yeah. Wintertime, there's tons of edibles that are out there in the forest, laying on the forest floor. There's mushrooms that grow through the whole winter. There's only mushrooms in Appalachia grow mushrooms in Appalachia grow 11 out of the 12 months of the year. Now, you're not going to get the full variety, but there are still plenty of edible mushrooms that are growing all the way up into January. And then February is like the downtime. February is the hard month. You can survive February, you can survive the rest of the year. And there's no need to go outside of a home range for that.
Yeah. And I think the food source is a valuable data set in its own right, because if you have food, then you're dealing with a physical creature.
Yeah.
You are.
What is oh shoot. What do they eat? What's the diet, I guess?
You're dealing with a large creature, so anything that's that large has to be by default omnivorous. You've got to eat a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
That you can find. It's whatever you can find, whatever you can hunt and kill, anything you can get your hands on. Scavenging out of dumpsters, scavenging off the road. We've got some pretty convincing photos of a very violent deer death. That when I was working with the DNR, I was called out on for a poaching, possible poaching investigation, and we were able to rule out that it wasn't a poacher. And me and the DNR law enforcement guy were also like, this isn't a coyote. And the DNR, the law enforcement guy, he actually told me that this thing looks like it's the best evidence of what you're always out here traipsing around the woods looking for.
Nice.
Because there's a handprint on the neck.
Oh wow!
Like there's bruising, and there's 4 clear fingers on one side and 1 clear finger on the other. Something grabbed this deer by the neck, snapped its neck, bashed it against the rocks, and then
Jesus,
that's horrifying.
God,
that is horrifying.
So we're clearly under the assumption that they eat deer.
Yeah.
We're also under the assumption that they're eating and using these vernal pools that are out in the forest. Vernal pools are collection points of water where you get runoff from snowmelt, runoff from rain, collecting in a small little puddle that turns into a big pond. Yep. That's where all your amphibians are going to go. All your reptiles and amphibians in the area are going to go there to drink. Your mammals are going to go there to drink water. They're also going to go there to predate on the amphibians. So you've got large salamanders that can, be about 10, 11 inches long and weigh about 80 to 90 grams, and that's 80 or 90 grams of fat and protein.
Wow.
And
I didn't even think of
frogs, same deal. And then the easy
mushrooms.
The easy pickings are the big egg sacs. That is a ton of fat. Ton of fat just sitting there right in the water. It's not even running from you. You just gotta pick it up, gulp it down like an oyster.
Which we did document at Wineberry.
We've documented it at Wineberry. We've also documented it at the salamander site.
Yeah.
Wow.
I never would have thought of stuff like that.
I know, yeah. Which, that just makes me wonder, they're staying in this 10 to 15 mile radius. Is it just, a pack? Is it a couple different packs, And also, have you guys ever found fur or hair or anything like that? Just for, I think if anyone who ever listens to anything about Bigfoot, it's always, well, why hasn't it been found? But what you said earlier about the UFOs and how everyone's expecting a UFO to just land on the White House, that's the disclosure. Well, the disclosure could be any of these films or casts or anything that you have, but what would be your answer to somebody who said, if it exists, you guys have this, this, and this, what's your reason that we haven't found a full body or anything like that?
The easiest answer for the full body is that the forest is very efficient at destroying a carcass. There's been some, there's these big human remains farms that are out and about where people will go. It's forensic units will go out there and they'll take bodies and cadavers and nail them to the ground so things can't carry them off, and see how many days it takes.
Oh wow!
For the bodies to break down, and it's extremely fast. And here specifically in West Virginia, I did this 2 summers ago with as a little project that we did for our nationalist group. And we took a deer that had been hit and killed on the road, drug it out to a spot, and put it out in the forest. And in 6 days, you couldn't even tell that there was a deer that had been laying there.
Wow.
And because of the temperature, because of the humidity, because of all the scavengers and everything else, decomposition is extremely rapid. It sets on immediately. Then you have scavengers coming in, picking things apart, and then you have coyotes and other larger animals will come in and take the bones.
Yeah.
So
it depends on the biome.
It does. It really does. And so, I mean, why haven't we found a body? We don't know. We don't know if these things have culture.
Yeah.
They could bury their dead. We don't know.
Yeah, they could be.
Nobody's ever witnessed it. That's not been in a sighting report, so we don't have. We don't have a data point to base that on.
What you were saying earlier, Ron, about the gibberish or whatever that you were hearing, if that's a dialect that they're sharing between them, it's very clear. There has to be some sort of communication barrier that they have, which also I'm sure you guys, if you are seeing it or know it's there, then it's probably already knew that you were there.
It's very aware that we're there, and the theory is they have multiple ways to communicate.
Yeah. I mean, the tree knock that we were talking about.
Wood knocks, the mouth clicks, which we've heard mouth clicks multiple times at these sites. And then, of course, the gibberish, which I think is a little more rare, but it is reported quite a bit.
And, one of the things that I freak out newbies whenever they go out with us, or when we do a workshop and we take a big group of people out and they've been on the internet way too much and they're hearing these things like, oh, don't whistle when you go in. This goes back to them knowing you're there. In our research areas, in our active research areas, when we go in, we make our presence known. And
you're going to get hurt more likely when they don't know.
Yeah, when you startle them, scare them.
And we've actually been doing this for so long. We've noticed that when it's in the research areas we go into, when we kind of announce ourselves as coming in the same way that we always do, generally nature goes on about its business. And so I'll go out and I'll whistle in the dark. I'll whistle in the forest and make a two-tone whistle to I'm here, and then go on about my business.
Yeah.
And you have all these people who have read too much online, like, oh, you're gonna disappear. Something will come get you, And but that's not the case. Like I make sure to make my presence known. Let them know. And I'm not going out there howling, screaming, and beating on trees. We don't do that.
Yeah.
We're very passive investigators with the paranormal and with Bigfoot and with the UFO stuff. We don't go out there trying to instigate.
Yeah.
I believe that all the phenomena, all of it, there needs to be serious respect for it.
Of course, yeah.
We're dealing with something that is highly intelligent in either case. I mean, even if Bigfoot is a flesh and blood, that it's intelligent. It has managed to stay away from us with some of the best equipment on the planet, unless of course it has, been covered up, as some believe. Who knows? I don't know that. I mean, there's so many options with that.
There are. And this goes back to the last one. While we might not know they're here, why don't they come out and just say it like they have the UFO thing?
Well.
One of the popular school of thought is that, logging industry and things like that have kind of kept it under wraps, because we've seen what happens when an owl or a woodpecker gets spotted in a forest.
Yeah.
Suddenly, all of those timber permits get revoked and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge industry.
Environmental
There's
protection.
that. Yeah, there's that. And then there's the possibility. You want me to do it? I'm going to do
Go
it.
for it.
Then there's the possibility, and it's just a possibility. It's not, it's the speculation land. Let's go back to those thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, say about, 20, 30,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And, we're not here. I mean, we're not here. We don't look like this anyway, do we? But something's here. Something's out there in the forest walking around doing its thing, and say someone comes down here and sees that, and they start manipulating that, and they start changing it, and all of a sudden we look like this. Some of us do, but there's still our great ancestors out there in the woods that we're out here hunting now, trying to figure it out. Well, if someone figured that out at hot top levels, I think I would want to keep that quiet.
That there's this ancestral human being that exists within our mountain ranges, because I've always thought the Appalachian Mountains, the oldest mountain range to exist on Earth. Why wouldn't this thing exist equally as long? Who's going out there that deep into the wilderness for days upon days upon days on end, especially when you don't know the best hiding spots? If you can drop off like a 5 or 6 foot drop off, no problem, and just go, you control your environment around you,
And a lot of people think, oh, well, there's a big thing, they have to make a lot of noise. That thing that we saw down there, the popping sound, if it wouldn't have been for that little slight twig breaking sound, and the only way that it was picked up was because they had a parabolic dish about this big pointed down in that valley. If that parabolic hadn't been there, if they'd had headphones on, we would
Heard nothing.
Never look down there.
know to look down in that valley. Period. So these things are huge, yes, but they are extremely stealthy. They're extremely quiet, and they learned that skill.
One thing that I have sat here and thought about was, I guess you guys were at Wineberry and the shadow dipping down.
Oh no,
and
that
then-
was
That was at Logan's
farm.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay, you're talking about the big mass. that
where it
drops
was mimicking the
down.
sound of your son.
Yeah.
That was at your farm.
That's insane.
Yeah,
That's
Yes. Well, we had been
I
there
wanna
multiple
puke.
times with Rowan, and what we think was happening there is, because I'm a classically trained cook, I don't ever have leftovers. I always cook to the portion for the individuals that are there, and it's just habit. While on the other hand, the rest of our family that goes there, they're there all the time. They cook like they're feeding 18 people when they're just feeding 3.
Just throw it out.
And then they throw out the scraps.
Oh.
We weren't throwing out scraps, but there were vehicles there. So these things knew, because there were vehicles there, then there would be food there. It's made the correlation at some point. So these things had been in close proximity when my son had been there and had been crying before, had heard it, learned it, been able to mimic it. That's my theory on that.
Very possible.
I feel like we're in an M. Night
Or
Shyamalan
aliens.
movie.
Yeah.
They just
yeah.
emulated it.
That's crazy. That is so crazy. I've thought about this ever since you have said it, and I wonder if in that moment it wants you to come back out because it's just as much, like, I wonder if there's just as much an interest in you guys as there is. I wonder if it's reciprocated.
I think it is, man.
Curiosity.
Because I think there is a curiosity, because there have been times, multiple times, we've been out in the woods and we've been looking for this thing, and then we start getting action, we start getting responses, and they when we go to leave, it's like, hey, no, crack,
Yeah.
get back here,
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah,
done.
All the phenomena kind of does that.
Yeah,
All of
does.
it.
Oddly
That's the
enough, it
weird.
does.
Especially, I'd say, from a passive point of view, you're not there. I know I was watching something on Investigation Discovery, maybe, and they were doing a paranormal one. And this guy was telling this story of how they were out by this campfire, and something had come up, and they had heard something like that hornet thing, and they had run back to their home, and it was a trailer, and something was beating on the trailer, and they went out the next morning, and something had tore some of the tin off the trailer.
Oh, wow.
And this guy who's telling it is just, you can tell he's reliving it as he's telling this story.
Yeah.
And investigation,
that visceral response.
and investigation discovery, like they're just, it's kind of like, oh, look at this. This guy said he saw a big spooky thing, and they ran home and they were afraid. But this guy's telling, like, it's almost like he's about to cry.
He's sitting there traumatized.
Yes,
and
traumatized
they're just like, this is good stuff.
by this existence, you know. And
yeah, because to them it's ratings. To this guy, he lived through this night of terror.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it changes you.
Yeah.
I mean, it changes your paradigm. And like I said, you don't forget that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Ever.
I mean, the flashlight story that I told you guys, that honestly has been something I've thought about every day since it's happened to me.
Right? Yeah.
Because since that moment, my life has not been the same. It has completely changed because I have now interacted with something that up until that point in my life I've never wanted to interact with, and had very minimal, where I could write it off. Like the shoulder on my back, like, oh, I'm thinking too much about it. It was just the wind. It was just this. It was just that. That was so undeniable. Like, I can't sit there and, as much as I've wanted to debunk it, like you guys have said, what could I do to debunk that? There's no conclusion I can come to other than there's something else at hand there.
Yeah, there absolutely is.
And that's the beautiful thing of what we do.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Wild and weird.
That's, like, I've got chills just having this conversation with you guys, because those moments that you guys have had over this long period of time is something that Justin and I are really starting to get into and experience. Yeah. And it's just, it's crazy. It's so crazy.
You never know. Here soon, maybe we get out there in the forest, get out there into a haunted location together.
Hey,
I was getting ready to,
hey,
we gotta meet up.
I will be so afraid, but it'll be great. I'll love it. No
great
problem.
on video.
I don't know, man. We took.
We'll bring you a big diaper.
We took one of the most scared persons into the woods, and now she's a field investigator and one of the best ones we've got. So I wouldn't say that.
That's awesome.
That's the Wineberry story.
Wow.
100%, man. She had. She's a former, is a Marine, and terrified after her encounter. Wouldn't let her kids go out and play. Wouldn't all kinds of stuff, man. It was controlling her life.
Yeah.
And she had hundreds and hundreds of acres of property that she just didn't look at, didn't go to, because this encounter, she was terrified. And after the experience, and after we took her and walked her through it and said, and showed her that you can go out here and there's ways to do this safely. And now she, like Ron said, she is one of the best investigators in the team. She's yielded multiple casts now. She's really going after it.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yep, that changed her.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, and where you guys are located there in Giles, you're only, I think, like an hour away from the Wanbury site. Hour and a half.
Oh wow.
Well, we have to make a trip.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Together.
That would be awesome, guys. That would be so cool.
Private tour.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, guys, one last question: Is there a goal you two are trying to achieve this year? Or is there any big things coming up?
We're still trying to make up for 2020. You'll have to forgive us.
Right.
Yeah, 2020. We had so much
kind
of
of took all the wind out of our sails there.
Yeah.
Well, that was just a year in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That year lasted 10 years.
Exactly. Is there like a big project you guys are trying to work on? Always.
Yep, there's always something new with us. We're always developing new merchandise. We're always making new things people can buy. We're always making new things people can consume.
We are working more on the YouTube this year. We have invested, and we are working more on the YouTube this year. We're working on getting more documentation of our
more field
investigations,
more time out there on camera,
so everyone can see that.
Yeah,
we go out a lot. We did a lot of stuff where we're just there. We're in the moment doing.
I have tons of footage that's just sitting there. So I'm like, well, let's just put it together into these little shorts and make it. And so we came up with a new series, and that's the Wild and Weird Investigations. Episode 2 should be out next week, hopefully.
Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, it's just about trying to normalize this. Like I said, I mean, everyone has these experiences. Every single person. I guarantee you, you ask anyone, if they have not personally had an experience, then someone they know or someone in their family has had an experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Either they're all liars, every single one of them, and the whole country, the whole world is crazy, or something is going on and we need to really step up and look at what that is. And that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Right.
And we're trying to start back here in our home state, because it has some really great legends.
Oh yeah.
And you know, we're trying to shine a positive spotlight on West Virginia, and I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, it looks
so
like it.
For the goal thing, I think what Ron said, shine a more positive light here in West Virginia. Grow the YouTube a little bit better, get some more content out there for people to see and be involved in, and then also provide a bigger question. We've done this consistently every year. We've been doing what we're doing. We're providing a larger circle for people to come to in one way or another, whether it's through coming to events that we're hosting, come and listen to us on the radio and talking with your friends about it, come and just meeting us out on the road, and coming to the events that we're going to be at, as well as the ones that we're hosting. And I think just making the circle bigger and showing people how accessible this table really is, and just keep moving forward the way we already are.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who come from Germany to see us.
Yeah,
I don't
awesome.
understand that.
That's awesome.
It just blows my mind.
That's sick. So, what can you guys plug for people that want to, that are interested in you?
Where can everybody find you? You know, what's the best way to reach you guys?
Do your thing, Joe.
Well, if you guys want to continue listening to our ramblings on and on and on, you can find us at Wild and Weird Radio anywhere podcasts are found. You can also head on over to YouTube, where we put up documents and pictures and everything else that you're missing just in the audio only portion. You can just like, share, and subscribe there. Go ahead, just a single little motion of hitting that like button and hitting subscribe. 2 easy actions that you can perform for both of these shows that have major consequences for us. Then, if you want to find us on the road, we've got a road show map that you can find over on wildandweirdwv.com. You can also find us anywhere you want to find us, because the internet is right there at your fingertips.
That's
so
true.
If you have had a sighting and you would like to report it, and you don't want to be in that group of hands that drops off, you can send your sighting report to wildandweirdwv@gmail.com, or you can go to wildandweirdwv.com and hit the report a sightings tab, at which point you will be given our standardized sighting report form. You can go through and answer a few questions, and as soon as you press send, it's going to be delivered into our mailboxes. If you are on the other side of the world from us, fear not. Even though we can't make it there ourselves to be boots on the ground to investigate your happening, we know somebody in that area, most likely, who is, and we can get this report to them and get you the due diligence that you deserve to find out what happened and all that great stuff.
That was flawless.
Yeah, I can see Ron. He's just like, I knew it. I told him to go. He does his thing. It's that
He
easy.
does this every week.
Every week.
That's-
show up.
That's Justin. I just say, hit it, Justin.
I'm
Let him know.
nowhere near as good as that, though. Jesus.
It's the microphone.
Ron, Joe, thank you so much. This has been awesome,
Yeah.
for real.
Absolutely, guys. This
before
has been
we-
a blast.
You know,
Awesome.
once we're done with this, I'd like to talk to you guys for a second after we're done recording.
Okay, sure.
Absolutely.
But-
Yeah,
thank you guys so much for being on. It's been an amazing conversation.
It has,
I've
yeah.
learned so much. I think you guys are really going to open up a lot of eyes. I really hope people will come forward to us on this episode, kind of tell us a little more about their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I love about our podcast, especially where we're from, I think that we inform a lot of people on, you may have seen something, you just didn't know what you saw.
Yeah.
And this might be their eye-opener to be like, oh my God, I saw a Bigfoot. Or, whatever instance.
yeah.
Wow. What a conversation.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Definitely did not just wait 5 seconds between the intro to now to do this.
It was very it was a very overwhelming like conversation. So I'm gonna have to like listen to it again to process all of what they said because they're so intelligent with this stuff.
Yeah, like this is vetted. There's a group of individuals who are vetting this, denying, approving. You know, all these instances of appearances, reports. You know, everything.
Yeah.
Really hoped everybody liked it. I really liked having the conversation.
It was awesome, yeah. And we hope to work with them in the future.
Yeah, Joe and Ron, you guys are so dope.
So dope. Well, we thank you guys for being on, for real. We didn't think that it was going to happen, but it did, and it was awesome.
We felt like 3 episodes of true crime. You guys might want something a little different.
Yeah.
You know, go out. Try to find some professionals for you guys to listen to.
Absolutely.
Definitely check them out. You know, their stuff is very, very good, especially if you want to learn more about like West Virginia lore.
Absolutely.
What they have. And the specific migrating patterns and the existence of their Bigfoot.
The scientific method of their investigations.
Yeah, what these guys have went through. Very, very meticulous and very, very thought out process.
Yeah. We will have all their information in the descriptions below of wherever you're, tuning into this episode. But thanks again for them, and thanks for everybody for listening and watching. It was a good one.
It was.
Long
great. One. Yeah. Really appreciate it. Still on Cloud 9 from the LA Times and all that. And thanks everybody again for just supporting the podcast and doing what you're doing. We're at 975 members. If we can get to 1,000, I would be elated.
He's getting a tattoo.
I am. I'm going to get a tattoo. I guess it's Cryptic out there tattoo. That's what I'm going to get. That's what I'm going to do.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I want to get it regardless, but I'll just get it. I'll get it sooner if we hit 1,000.
Right. We will film it too.
Yeah.
We'll put it on the podcast.
Also, just want to give a very special shout out to my mom.
Yes.
Yeah, my mom had a recent health episode, a little cardiac event.
Scared everybody.
Yeah, scared the hell out of me.
Right.
And just want to thank everybody who reached out and sent her well wishes. My mom's, I think, one of the biggest supporters and the biggest fan of the show.
Yeah, for real.
Has always been here, always hype about it. So, love you, Mom.
We love you, Vicky.
Yeah, love you.
Yeah.
And, if you want to join the cult, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Give us a 5-star on Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Like and subscribe on YouTube.
Yeah, like and subscribe on YouTube. And
Patreon.
Yeah, if you want to
We got a lot of bonus stuff, cranking out now. Yeah.
Story about Mavis, some scary dog stories.
Yeah, Julia tells me something insane about Mavis and a dead dog.
Yeah.
That you guys want to
You're going to want to check that out.
For just $5 a month.
That's it.
And you will support us. You will support the show. You will help us grow. And we would love you forever.
Yeah. And Justin, if that's it.
All right.
Lastly, everybody, watch your back. It's cryptic out there.